To some people, they're two grown men who've never quite grown up. Others see them as adventurers in the great tradition of Drake, Cook and Scott, John Ridgway and Tom McClean. In 1966, Ridgway rode the Atlantic with Che Blythe 92 days in an open boat. Since then, he's circumnavigated the world, tried single-handed sailing and led overland expeditions, but always returning to his base at Ardmore in northwest Sutherland, his home since 1964. He runs an adventure centre there, giving jaded businessmen and city youngsters a taste of the mountains and the sea.
Arms, but with your whole body. It's got to be a very easy motion if you're going to go for 3,000 miles.
When he was in the parachute regiment in the early 60s, the public school-educated Ridgway came across a young squaddy called Tom McClean, an Irish orphan who also had a taste for adventure. In 1969, McClean also rode the Atlantic, but on his own and against Ridgway's advice. Since then, McClean's twice broken the record for making the crossing in the smallest sailing boat, on one occasion literally taking a chainsaw to his craft in order to qualify. McClean also runs an adventure centre in northwest Scotland. His latest scheme is to set up a temporary home later this year on Rockall, 300 miles out in the Atlantic, reinforcing Britain's claim to the controversial rock. Tom McClean, what is all this about Rockall? I mean, is this just another mad scheme, or do you have some serious purpose underneath it all?
Well, no, nothing really serious other than an adventure. I think it's part of UK and it's very lonely. There's not many people there. And there's less and less things to do. It's very near home. And I just feel that I would like to make an adventure of it. Perhaps go out and study the birds and things, and that's what it's all about.
Do you feel that you have to justify what you do, John Ridgway, in order to avoid
really,
people saying, a couple of loonies?
I do now. Perhaps I did once, or I was frightened of criticism, but I think as you get older you lose interest in that, really. I don't think I do at all.
So I think one of the things that I find most interesting about both of you is the fact that you, although you started off from very different backgrounds, an orphan on the one hand and somebody from a middle-class background on the other, your lives have converged in the most extraordinary way. I mean, you both ended up in, I shouldn't say ended up, but you both were in the Paras and then the SAS, and all this circumnavigation and rowing the Atlantic and so on, and then ending up within 200 miles of each other in the northwest of Scotland with adventure centres.
I've often thought that it was very odd that this very small unit out of the whole army, there were only 18 people in it, and that three of us have rowed across the Atlantic and done a number of other things together. And I don't think we are so widely different. I was an adopted baby, and his cot could have been lying to mine. Someone comes in and picks us up. He could be me and I could be him.
Well, now, given your similarities and the differences, would you ever contemplate sailing together? Or,
I don't
if not,
think
why
so.
not?
No, I don't think in any of this sort of thing you become an individual, and I would say that in both our cases we both wanted to be independent, and we are entirely independent. All three of us would want to be independent. The same thing would apply, I think, in mountaineering. The personalities don't get on very well together.
Well,
I would have to be running my own thing. And so would he, and so would
I
John.
love being on my own. I think people just think that you must be nuts to be out there, but all I can say is, you can only tell the truth now. It's easy to say it now. It's not so easy to say out there, but even when I'm out there, I think, well, I'm out here. It's not so bad, and my mates, or some of them, could be digging holes or doing a job, and I'm quite enjoying it. I mean, you get the occasional day it's really stormy, and you don't think of like packing in, but I mean, it's just rough. You batten down, you get on with the job, and I can honestly say 95% of the time I enjoy it. I think it's great fun.
But you don't
really live for it.
You don't feel the need to have someone else to talk to share experiences with.
No, I love I say it one minute, and yet at the other time I can go to a party and chat and sing and dance, and yet somehow I can switch off and I can go. I know I've been 100 days. I could go 400 days. Just on my own.
But does this apply to you, John? Because you do
No,
get...
I don't think so.
No,
No.
I would have thought you felt loneliness more than
Yes,
Tom.
much more. Although I think I'm feeling it less and less as I get older. But I do very much like to have someone there. And
But do you think that you're a difficult person to be with over a long period? I mean, I think Che Blythe found once or twice that things didn't perhaps go along quite as smoothly as all that, and perhaps people
I'd
like
say
you.
he's a very difficult person.
Well,
There's very few people in the world who can put up with him.
exactly.
That was an achievement.
Well, but I
Perhaps
think.
that's why we're on our own now.
But you are all very strong individuals, and it's very difficult for people like that to rub along together over the very hazardous conditions that you have to face when you're out there battling against the weather and the sea.
Yeah.
But you're trained to do that, you see.
Yeah.
I think that I would say I could get on with anybody.
But then
But
when
I don't care what they do, so long as they do what I want them to do.
The very first time I was really on my own was in the jungle. It wasn't planned. I was out on patrol, and we got shot up by CTs, that's terrorists, and we all scattered and did our RV drills. And when I came back to the RV, there was no one there. And I was perhaps 180 miles inside. And there's no helicopters, there's nothing. And the thing is, you just have to proceed back to the LZ and take your time. And for the first day, I suppose you are a bit tense, you know. I mean, there's all sorts of creepy things, and you're on your own. But you've done your training, as John says, and you just get on with it, and you start looking for fruit, and you got no food, and, you know, and after perhaps 2 days, the confidence is there. And that was the very first time I was on my own. And from then, I've sort of never looked back.
how much do you think your very early experiences as a very small boy in an orphanage helped you to be self-contained?
Yeah, in the orphanage, you see, it's called Fegans, a bit like Oliver Twist. But I can remember our food being put in on the table, and the head boy would have it all. And it depends who you was and how much you got. And that was the sort of time where you had to fight for everything, even for your food. We used to play a game called Overboard, and they'd put the food here, and you'd have your knife and fork like this, and if you put your knife down, there's a little game, it'd say electricity runs, and you'd grab each other's food. So if you wasn't strong there, you didn't survive. You certainly didn't get any food. So that's very crude, but that's the start of it. Then when I went and joined the Paras in 60, it seemed a lot easier in some way. A lot of boys join the Paras and say, oh, how tough it is. Physically it's tough, but mentally it wasn't tough to me. I just been living with a crowd of boys again.
Very tough to me, though.
Yeah, just grab what you can. And this is, I mean, again, very crude, but it's a start, it's the basis to go on. And it makes you independent. You just feel that whatever happens, you'll get by.
Now, why do you suppose, John, that you don't have quite that same amount of self-containment?
I don't know. I think it must be your background, and I've always been a very underconfident person, really. And Tom says, oh, it wasn't very tough to him, but it was terribly tough to me. Although I'd been captain of boxing at Sandhurst, I was very underconfident. I found myself running this little unit, and it was very inspiring to meet Tom. Tom was the toughest person I think I've ever met in my life.
But, well, you know, you talk about not having much confidence, and yet just a little while ago you said you wanted to impose your will on other people. Everybody had to do what you wanted.
Well, that's a reaction, isn't it, really,
Is it?
I think. Yes, I think so.
And how do other people react to
Taking
that? I mean, it's not a likeable characteristic, is it, really?
I think some people do like it. Yes, I think a lot of people do like direction.
But if you're working with very strong-minded individuals, it must be terribly difficult to say, well, I'm going to be top banana.
Oh, they can't do that in the army.
No, that's
You've got to
true.
do what you're told.
It's 20
Outside
years since we were in it, Chief.
Outside of the army.
It's changed now.
Yes.
It's much more of a job, I think, and they
Yes.
sort of debate what they're going to do.
But you're not in the army when you're on a when you're on a boat, for instance. Or you are. You
No,
can be the
well,
skipper, but
yes, it's difficult, really. I think for anybody, and a lot of people in a small situation like a boat going around the world. We had 13. And it is difficult, and there's no escape from that.
when you were rowing with Che, did you ever feel at times that you really would have been quite happy to have seen him go over the side?
Not
and
at all,
never come
no.
back?
No, I mean, it's easy to quote out of something that we didn't get on. I think the strong point about us was that we did get on, and that the other two people at that time who were both killed didn't get on quite as well.
The ones who went off ahead
We'd
of
done
you.
a lot of
Yes.
long-distance canoe racing together, and I think it comes back to the training. And we did get on very, very well together.
But surely there must be times, I mean, there are times in ordinary life when you can so rub up against someone the wrong way that you really wish them dead for a brief moment, but
I think
you
that
know.
comes from training there, and having to rely upon each other. No,
Yeah,
I
and
wouldn't underestimate the training aspect of it at all.
And growing up, you learn to tolerate people as well. You wouldn't younger, when you're 18 and 19, you just bang on one. But now you think, oh, it's not worth it, and you just put your back to it. And that, in a way, that's bigger. Yeah, but, it's a much better thing.
You've actually killed a man, haven't you, when you were on active service?
Oh, yeah.
And you didn't really react so terribly strongly to it, did you? I mean, it was just something that had to be done.
I think when you're 18, 19, you're a soldier. Let's face it, there's all these soldiers and there's nowhere to go. There's no action. And when there is action, there's a bit of excitement. And when you're out there and you come under fire, the adrenaline's pumping, the heart's going, but it's excitement. If you saw your mate shot dead next to you, you'd be upset, and it's not a nice thing. But at the same time, if there's enemy there and they're to be shot, you shoot them. It's your duty to shoot them. I think if you funk that, you shouldn't be there. I mean, people say, oh, you've been put there or you volunteered to be there, but that's soldiering. It's a dirty job.
That's why the three of us would have left, though, really, because it was like working at the post office, really.
It's a bit tame.
It was too boring.
Yes.
I mean, they're very, very keen to get people for a life of adventure, visiting nice people in strange places and killing them, but actually, there's not a lot of that.
No, indeed, but if there were some of that as far as you were concerned, how would you react to it?
Would stay in it, I would think.
But how would you feel about killing someone? I mean,
I
Tom
don't think it
took
would bother me very much.
But you never actually had to do it?
No, but it wouldn't bother me a lot, I don't think.
You don't think that soldiers can afford the luxury of a conscience?
Not in the heat of the moment, I don't think you do, no. Not if you think the bloke's going to kill you.
Yeah, as I quoted before the programme, I mean, like Vietnam with the children business, I mean, it's easy for the press and the politicians and all the rest to say, oh, it's terrible to kill women and children and all sorts, and it is, we know it is, but war's terrible. It's a terrible thing. And if my buddy's there and there's someone there, bang, that's the end of them, because I owe him allegiance.
You were talking a little while ago about adrenaline pumping up, pumping through you. Do you think there's anything for both of you in what the scientists say, that you can become addicted to an adrenaline high, that you really need it? You need danger and excitement.
So, yeah. I think that's true. I think it becomes increasingly difficult to be stimulated. In fact, I almost need things to go wrong before I feel any sense of relaxation. Well, you see what I mean?
Yes.
I find it relaxing that it's gone wrong because now there's something to be excited about. Yeah.
There was one description somewhere where I read, I think where you were making landfall after one of these very long voyages, and you were coming into the wild Irish coast, and it was a case of you were either going to make it or you weren't. It was with Che, I think, when you were rowing back.
Yes.
And you said that the exhilaration of that moment of not knowing whether you were going to survive or die was almost overwhelming.
Well, you're looking for the not grey days in life. I'm sure you've had one or two, but I think we've had a few days that weren't grey at all.
So.
He'll have a few not grey days on Rockall. And I think after the rowing where the other two people were killed, as far as I was concerned, I decided to look on the rest of life as a bonus, really, as people at the Somme, the First World War, 60,000 Allied troops killed before breakfast. Those who survived try and look at life as a bonus.
Yes, but
I would try and get the most possible out of life, and I'm not looking to the past, I'm looking to the future.
Yes, but you're creating your own danger, and the men of the Somme weren't, obviously.
Well,
that's the difference.
The feeling of being alive. It's very important to me, certainly.
Tom, as far as God is concerned, have you had any thoughts about another power looking after you, stopping you going over the side forever?
No, you get the question a lot, of course, because it sort of follows on that you're all on your own in the middle of the Atlantic. All I can say is that I had nothing like that at all.
You had a religious background. There was a little boy, didn't you? I mean, imposed upon you.
Again, and that's why you go the other way, because you got a bit of a spirit into you and think, well, what's all this about, But all I can say is, I mean, I don't know. I think I'll be a bit big-headed to say I know the way, but you can only be truthful with yourself. And deep down in me, I don't feel that there's anybody guiding me special, there's anyone there. All I would think would be, like, matter of fact, my food's there, my water's there, the boat's here, it's not damaged, I'm okay. And that, everyday things. Again, I mean, there is a God, I'm sure. But, I mean, I don't go on every day, I don't think about it, I get on with living.
What about John?
Well, I can remember on the rowing trip that we thought, well, we wouldn't be doing any praying while times were good, so why should we start them bad? But after a few weeks, we were trying to get our hands together and the fingers over the oars. We couldn't straighten them out. We thought we'd give it a pretty good go. Yeah. I think I would pray quite a lot when things are not going well, which they frequently don't.
Yeah, it seems to me that Tom's motto might be, pray to God, sailor, but row for the shore. But yours, perhaps, you might think rather more of the power of the Almighty, or some power to save you at the last minute.
Sometimes. I think it depends how you feel. Other times you feel rather ruthless about the whole thing.
What is the not greyest day you've ever had? You're talking about not grey days.
Well, I can only really remember, I think, back to what I did last, which was this 200 non-stop trip round the world, when I was trying to, in the middle of my life, come to terms with being alive and dying. And so I think I'm really relating to that, perhaps, to being off Cape Horn, having not seen any land for 5 months, that sort of a day. That's what would remain freshest in my mind now, I think, on a stormy day right underneath Cape Horn. Just seems, riding a big machine like that, there's nothing more to life than that, and the rest of things are pretty trivial. And the time is soon going to run out for me. I mean, that's all I've got is time, and it's running past, and I want to be the most of it I can. I want to do the most I can.
Without making too portentous an issue of it, could you say, looking at yourself honestly, that you do have a death wish to some extent?
Half in love with easeful death. Well, it is exhilarating, isn't it? That it is a stimulating, unboring thing.
What about thoughts of your wife? And, I mean, you've both married remarkable women, if I may say so, who have supported you every inch of the way, even gone with you on one occasion.
Perhaps they don't find it as boring as they might have done in Surrey, you know. Although they might find it very annoying, it hasn't been as dull as it could have been in suburbia, with all the attendant problems.
But when you're indulging in your taste for adventure and danger and dicing with death and all the rest, what about the wife who's going to be left bereft? And the children?
Yes,
I mean, does this, for instance, with you? Well, bereft and bereaved.
No, I think the way, I mean, you'd have to ask Jill that, but how I see it for Jill is at first she didn't want me to go to do any adventures. That's number one. Next, that I really want to do them, you know. The first one with Jill was Giltspur 1, was when I went across in 9 foot. And but once I made my mind up and I started building that boat, she completely changed. She just started writing the letters, and people would say, well, what do you think? This was the family, and the family would say, oh, he's nuts, you know, you shouldn't let him go. But Jill, I'm sure deep down, would never ever want to say, no, you can't go. I mean, it'd be idiotic, I feel, for Jill, you know, as a person, because imagine all my life wishing I'd gone and never gone because she said no. You know, that's one way of looking at it. And she's just very helpful, and then I've had a few more ventures, and I think it's grown, and now I think she's come into the excitement of it a bit. She's got a little bit of interest. She wouldn't do it, but I think she definitely knows why I do it.
Well, one way of looking at it might be to say that you're both very self-centred, not to say selfish people.
Sure,
but then
my wife's actually come with me on a lot of the things that I've done.
Yes, but she hated the actual experience.
Not all of them, no. I think she's enjoyed quite a lot of them, going down the Amazon or over the ice cap in Chile, down to the Spanish Sahara. She did find it hard going around the world as the only woman in a crew of 13 for 9 months, but then...
But say that again more slowly. That was, you got over that one quite quickly.
Yeah, but she didn't dislike that. I mean, she did... I mean, we were stuck in the... We wanted to take a short route. We got stuck in the Antarctic pack ice, and I think she enjoyed that more than a lot of the crew.
That must have been an incredible experience, actually, to look out there and see all these grinding blocks of ice.
It's not boring. I mean,
no,
it's something that you remember. It's an exciting thing to steer a boat through ice in bad weather, and when it's sort of bumping along the side, it's exhilarating.
But like
if you think you can do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been around this Handa Island in northwest Scotland 600 times over the last 17 years, and the icebergs look rather like Handa Island. And for me to go through the ice was... I have a feeling for it, because I've done this for very many years. It's not something that was new to me, really.
When you first saw the ice field, the ice flows, were you astonished at their immensity? I mean,
Yes,
some
it
of them,
was
I
a
believe, are
wonderful
like
thing for me. It was a
skyscrapers.
wonderful thing to see. The sort of dazzling whiteness of it was what I'd come all that way to see.
What about ice fields and other phenomena of that kind?
The first Giltzburg trip I saw about 10 bergs, but the last one there was 300. I mean, my boat was 6 foot long, and there you were 2.5 million tons. So they were big things. And again, with John, you're pleased to see him in a way. You don't obviously don't want to get along with them alongside, but you just know that as long as there's about 3 or 4 miles between you and it's fine, and you can watch the thing, the big bluey things, rather than white. They're more blue than white, I
Yes,
think.
yes.
You would think all this is very sort of madcap and, what are people doing this for? But you should bear in mind that from this tiny little platoon, the 3 of us set off and have done all these different things quite independently. We are still alive. We're really quite careful people.
So
I would think we're more careful
Careful.
people than a lot of people in this studio.
Yes, I have the greatest admiration for you.
Well,
I just don't
think
know
you
how
need
you...
to admire
no,
it at all,
I do.
but I would think we're fairly careful.
Like, for instance, on the Giltzburg, in 6 foot. Now, this is what you think of weekend sailors, and they probably go out with one VHF radio. I had a ham radio, which I could talk 5,000 miles voice each way. I had a NavSat, which is satellite communications. I had 5 beacons. I had a life raft. I had all this in 6 foot. This is all safety. This is how I think of Jill. People say, I don't think of Jill and cuddle her and kiss her just when I'm going off. The thing I should be doing is make sure that I get back.
Of course.
And that's safety. Back up, tie on, more gear, and do it 100%. And really want to do it. If you don't really want to do it, don't go, because you won't come back.
What about this business of having to dive under the boat in almost any condition if you've had a problem with it and you think there's something wrong? I mean, that has always stunned me with long-distance sailors, that they've had to do this. And surely at that point you think, well, is this going to be it? Will the rope hold? Am I going to say goodbye?
It's just like climbing. Will the rope hold? I mean, it'll hold. I mean, climbing rope might be 2,000 pounds strength. You jump off, okay, it holds. You hurt yourself because it now cuts you in half. But no, you're not going to go nowhere. The thing is to get on and do it quickly before the sharks come.
Now the sharks.
It's frightening.
Yes,
sharks, yes.
Let's not forget these other creatures.
I think that is
apart
frightening
from-
if you haven't got any clothes on and you're swimming about down below the boat and it's 3 miles above the ground and you think these sharks are coming out of that.
And you're on your own and there's no lookout.
So you don't spend a lot of time hanging about in there, really.
Can you actually hear them? I mean, is there a sort of shing sound as they come through
I
the
think you
water?
think you can hear them. They get out. You're very strong at getting out.
Yes.
There was lots on the row for me. They're not as big as I thought. They're long and very slender. They're probably about 15 feet by about that. I don't know if I'll go in that or not, but I mean they're very, very slender. And it's basics. As long as they're out there and I'm in the boat, leave them alone. I think Fairfax, one of the other rowers, he used to hit them on the head with an oar. Well, that's silly. I mean, you aggravate them, get them going. I just leave them alone, brew up, and forget
They
them.
bit his
Yes.
arm.
But what?
Oh, yeah, they hold his arm off, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very nice.
He was over swimming. In fact, I'm not sure there was something to that. He had a bet.
He always liked to tussle.
He had a bet with a newspaper in
idea.
America that he could fight a shark, and I don't know what happened. He got into trouble.
Bit a lot of his arm off.
Lost the bet, yes.
I don't think
But
you would
that's-
go into that light-heartedly. I think it is this business of making a mistake which is the most worrying thing. On the recent trip in the Southern Ocean, other fellow asleep on a dark, stormy night, you're out there reefing the main, and you have to stand on the rail to get right out along the main boom, and very big waves, and you come down below and see that you've only hooked the safety harness on one of the clips and not 2, and you sit down and your hands shake a bit then, because you think that's getting old, is making you make mistakes like that, because had you fallen then, it would have pulled the thing out of your jacket and you'd have been gone now.
Have you ever been totally overcome by fear, the way people do when they're climbing and they suddenly freeze against the mountain and they can't move up or down?
No.
Obviously, you have a little bit of fear to be aware, but I mean, if you're gonna freeze right up, you know this. You shouldn't be out there.
I think that
You know,
people
if I
can
can
adapt
go-
to anything at all. That's a prime belief that I have.
Well, you couldn't
Oh,
really,
yeah.
for instance, you couldn't really adapt to a shark who was becoming over-friendly. I mean, that would be very difficult, I think, wouldn't
What
it?
if you're in the boat and it's outside the boat?
Yes,
I
but
mean,
what if-
when we talk about that, it's Fairfax. This guy jumping over. That's not safety. That's foolish.
But didn't you both go swimming, you and Che, once
Yes,
when
yes.
there were sharks around? I mean, that was a bit daft.
But
wasn't
not
it? I mean,
No,
I
we had to
worried
look
for you when
underneath the boat because we were worried about these gooseneck barnacles growing on the bottom.
Slowing the boat down.
And slowing the boat down, so we wanted to examine that. But that was the only time we did it, because we were trying to keep the boat moving the whole time. But we were over this particular shark. I can remember we were packing the tins, and you could see this shark on one side of the boat, and you look over the other side, and it's the same shark. It was wider than the boat. And that would be about 40 feet long, a basking shark.
Well, they're supposed to be reasonably...
It gives you a bit of a start, but you just get used to that, really. I think the actual trip, if you went to go around the world non-stop for 200 days, it would be more dangerous to go up and down the M1 for 200 days.
I'm sure
I think you're more likely to get killed if you think about it and keep yourself relaxed.
How much does fame matter to both of you?
The obvious answer is not at all.
But that's not the true
But I
answer,
mean, no, I think if you're truthful, everybody likes a pat on the back. I think to come back and all your friends, and your family, and your village, and they're all there saying, it's good.
I suppose if it mattered that much, you wouldn't live 50 miles from a railway and 3 miles from the road.
Exactly. Ourselves, and it's not as if we are all
I
the
think
time
you live in a
seeking
town,
publicity.
really, if that's what you want to do.
So it's natural.
Good. It's good for their business.
Yeah.
But you do, yes, but you do, John, enjoy fame. Didn't you once say that you wanted to be recognised as the chap who'd rowed the Atlantic?
I think that's quite true.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I can remember reading a thing before we went in 1966 in the something Hickey column or whatever it was called then,
William
if it
Hickey,
still is. And it said, this chap, because whenever I come into a room, someone's going to say, "There's the chap that rowed the Atlantic." I think that's perfectly true. To a certain extent, but only to a certain extent.
Yeah, a marked man.
I couldn't give a stuff about it, really.
So, how would you define the demon that drives you both? Not a demon,
Insecurity,
perhaps.
and I think it goes right back to our background. That he would be a Bernardes boy and that I would be an adopted orphan, really. And there is a need, everybody needs a spur to act at all. And I think, luckily, this was a spur that we found to live. A lot of people perhaps are blessed with being given too much and never motivate themselves to do anything.
So this presumably is one of the motivating forces behind the Adventure Centre, that you want to encourage other people to test themselves as far as they can.
I think I sort of have three principles there. Self-reliance, because I think if you're not self-reliant, you can't help anybody else. Positive thinking, because you have this cup of water, is it half full or is it half empty? Half of you, oh God, it's half empty. But in fact, it's half full. And the other thing is just a general business of trying to leave people and things better than you found them. And that's just a general guideline that I believe in, which perhaps has helped some other people in the last 20 years I've been running the school.
And the thing, I feel, and I suppose I haven't often said it, the unfortunate thing, some people might say I didn't, I was brought up in an orphanage. In some ways that's an advantage. You haven't got no worry of your other family, your mother, fathers, aunts, uncles, all that, and you can get on and do it. You ain't got no one in the way. You can just do what you want and enjoy life. But I was blessed with, I've always been a happy sort of person. I don't, when it is down, when the chips are down, I still just don't seem to worry. It's safety, action all the time. What's next, And you either got it or you haven't. It's not being big-headed. That is in me, and that's how I make my living. Now, it's like an electrician there or a cameraman. They might be good at, that's what they do for a living. This is what I do for a living. I enjoy it.
I think one of the things I've learnt from old Moby here was his great thing that the less you have, the less you've got to worry about. And he has very, very few things. And I think simplicity is absolutely vital.
Can I read you something that I came across just the other day by Robert Louis Stevenson, who said that to lead an adventurous and honourable youth and to settle when the time arrives into a green and smiling age, is that the sort of thing that appeals to you?
Absolutely. I would never like to grow up. I think the best thing is to always be the schoolboy, because growing up is pretty cynical and disgusting.
Thank you both very much.